So as we are a bit in a rush, I will directly introduce our next presentation speaker, and it's Theresa. And she's more coming from a research perspective, from a research background, especially in hydrogen, because she's working at the ZBT. In German, it's the Zentrum für Brennstoffzellentechnik. So they're like doing research on fuel cell technology. And there she works as a head of science of management and communications. And yeah, please welcome her on stage. I'm very curious about your perspective. So.
Thank you so much.
Enjoy.
Well, thanks, Daniel, and thanks to the organizers for inviting me. It's a pleasure to speak here. My name is Theresa, and my own background was actually in molecular biology, but then I left research after my PhD and switched more to like management and communication roles. And this is also what I'm doing now for the Hydrogen and Fuel Cell Center in Duisburg. Daniel said it's about fuel cells. We started off with fuel cells, but we really expanded into other spaces in the hydrogen system. And this is also what I want to talk about. Hydrogen as something that might be a piece of the puzzle to a sustainable energy system. For this talk, actually, I wanted to start with the big picture, and this was one of the biggest pictures I could think of. Does anyone know this image? Who knows the image? All right, you do. Okay, so this was actually the first color photograph that has been taken from space. It was from the Apollo 9 mission in 1968. And 40 years later, the astronaut who took it, Bill Anders, said, we set out to explore the moon, but instead we discovered the Earth. And what really, this picture really became an icon for the early environmentalist movements. And now when we look at what happened like 60 years after that, we still see this picture, and like I should say, depending on how you look at the energy sector, the global one, this might be slightly different there, but still it's safe to say that we really live in a fossil-powered world. And actually, like back in 1994, I think, when Angela Merkel took over the Ministry of the Environment, she said, well, more than 4% of renewables in the electricity mix is simply impossible. We can't achieve that. And we've heard it a couple of times before today. Luckily, this didn't age too well. And when we look, for instance, at the German electricity sector last year, again, slightly different in different numbers, but it's about 60% that are being derived from renewables. However, there is literally a price to pay for that, and that is that Germany saw over 450 trading hours where they have had negative electricity prices, so they had to pay money to get rid of the electrons off the grid, right? So you can really say that with 60% renewables, particularly when it comes from wind and solar, so much that storage is really key. And also, to complete the bigger picture, if you don't look at the electricity, but at the primary energy mix, this is why I was guessing with the 20% that it might be the share of renewables in the primary energy mix in Germany. It's only about 20%, and you can tell, is that a pointer also? Never mind. And you can tell from all the other energy carriers that, like, pretty much except for lignite, all of the other ones are being imported into Germany. So, but how does the future look like? Well, it's always tricky to look at the future because it's the future. So there is different models as of like how this energy, like this import dependency of energy carriers might develop. But all of the models that have been looked at, for instance, in this meta study, basically say that also in the future, both the European Union as a whole and Germany will still remain reliant on the imports of energy carriers. And I give everyone that electrification is key, and we should really try and increase the electrification in the whole primary energy sector. But even if you say you have a very optimistic view, we will expand electricity like in the primary energy sector, and also with efficiency, we might even be able to reduce electricity demand. I don't know how realistic that is, but even if that is, also these meta-studies from the Wuppertal Institute say that we will still need molecular energy carriers to be imported and maybe also to be generated. And so this is really where hydrogen comes into play, because we believe like if you have energy carriers that don't even contain carbon, nobody can actually come up with the idea of burning them and release more CO2 into the environment. So much to the introduction as of like what role hydrogen could play in the whole system as an energy carrier. So when we look at a potential system that builds on hydrogen as an energy carrier, I now want to quickly go through the different parts of that. You have already said you're also involved in all of them, like production, distribution, and storage, and also end use. We're also doing research projects in all these three branches, and I just want to give a super short overview about them. When we look at the production of hydrogen, today this is mostly being done by steam reformation of fossils, so of natural gas. This is not carbon-free. But we hope that in the future, more and more hydrogen will be produced by electrolysis. So you use renewable electricity and generate hydrogen. You can then store it, you can distribute it, you can use it in various ways, or you might ship it over long distances. And first, I would like to look at the production side. If you read the European Hydrogen Strategy, you will learn that the aim is to have 40 gigawatts of electrolysis capacity being installed by 2030. And then when you see, when you have a look at how much has been really installed of the things that has been announced, you see that we have a massive implementation gap here. So I think it's pretty safe to say by now that we will miss this target. But it's the same with climate change. It's not irrelevant by which margin we will miss that target. And there's really hope. A few electrolysis companies opened over the last couple of years, like this one. It's a collaboration project of Siemens and Air Liquide in Berlin, and it has the capacity of producing 1 gigawatts of electrolyzers per year. And for instance, one of their first customers was a project in Normandy with a 200 megawatt electrolyzer being installed there. Unfortunately, I don't work for any of these companies, so I don't know the details about, which brings me to the transparency topic we might discuss later on. So I can't tell you, how much of these have already been installed, but it's going to be interesting and curious. I'm curious to see that over the next couple of years. Then zooming back to storage and distribution. If you think of hydrogen storage, you might think of these things, and this is all nice. It's different containers that can actually hold hydrogen gas, or even more sophisticated liquid hydrogen. That's all nice and marvelous pieces of engineering. But when we think of hydrogen really helping us to have a resilient energy system, we rather need to look at these things. That is caverns deep down in the earth. This one is about 1,000 meters inside of the earth and has about 500 cubic meters, which is not an awful lot. But the people who have tested this to be feasible will now scale this up by 1,000. So the idea is really to store large amounts of hydrogen in the ground. So also for resilience purposes, if anything happens, also right now, we appreciate that we have energy in form of gas for a couple of weeks backed up. And then when it comes to distribution, we can have a look at the European plans of the hydrogen backbone. This is about 40,000 kilometers. I now have to speed rap a little. 40,000 kilometers to be planned, mostly being repurposed natural gas pipelines, which has also been proven to be feasible. And then in the end, the shipping. The shipping right now, most people look into converting hydrogen into ammonia as a derivative. The main benefits here is that ammonia is liquid at room temperature, and there is already ammonia vessels going all over the planet. So this is the first ammonia vessels now being tested as being run by ammonia while transporting it. And then there's crackers. I'm going to skip that. And since Thomas already talked about mobility a little bit, I'm also completely going to skip the whole mobility part of hydrogen because I think it's being discussed anyway enough. One thing I would like to point out, again, what I said before, today, 99%, about maybe 98, I don't know, of the hydrogen that we already have and that we use in refineries and that we use to make ammonia and stuff is derived from natural gas and from fossil sources, right? So turning this green is really, I would say, the no-brainer that we should do first. This is a refinery, and this is a steel factory. Just saying that would be a massive lever if we put hydrogen there, that we can really, really save emissions. So again, looking into the future, I might also skip over that because I do want to do my sales pitch for one more minute, right? Because this is actually where I work. This is our two buildings. So we're a research facility that sits in Germany. We're kind of like a spin-off of the University of Duisburg-Essen, but we operate independently. And mostly what we do is that we team up with SMEs and go for publicly funded projects for them to develop their technologies. Because like mostly the massive players like Bosch, they often don't really need us. They have their own R&D departments. We also collaborate with large businesses as well. But we collaborate a lot with SMEs that don't have this massive R&D departments and that look into, decarbonizing their energy systems, and we then help them. So we also cover everything from electrolysis to hydrogen infrastructure to fuel cells. And of course, we don't do that alone. We have a massive network, so we collaborate both in regional networks and also in European networks and do these research projects. So if any one of you maybe represents an SME or whatever, wants to get in touch about this anyway, please reach out. I'm happy to take this discussion further. I think this is the end of my talk. Was a little bit of speed wrap in the end, but yeah, we can discuss later on. Thank you.